And what's up, everybody? It's Wardrobe Hexy for color commentary, and McMurray, who's wrapping up a couple things here. So he's going to be fully engaged with us here in just a minute. But we are here today to talk to you about Andrew and I, or who? McMurray and I played A Victory Awaits from the International Game Series from MMP Multiman Publishing. And we just wrapped that up. We played, it's a 9-turn campaign game, and we played 8 turns, and we'll explain that when we get to that. So the Victory Awaits, there was a victory denied, a victory lost, and now a victory awaits. Victory Awaits is the Barbarossa for the first, I think the turns are 10 days, so it would be the first 3 months. Doesn't sound right, but maybe. And it's a cool game in that it's actually 4 games in one. It's designed to play because it came out this way originally. Army Group North as a separate game, Army Group Center and South as 3 separate games, I believe in a Japanese war game magazine. And then they combined them all for a Victory Awaits, and so you can play. Like I think I played center, right, Jeff? Because you're like, no one had played it when I.
Yeah, I played north, so you played center.
Yeah, I played center, and I think I'm not sure if anyone's played south yet. I feel like they have. Now I really want to play south. That's something that we kind of want to talk about afterwards, kind of based on things we learn. So I'll just keep going. Murray, just chime in when you're ready to go, and then I can kind of move off the summary here. But and I've muted you, McMurray, so when you're inside.
Yeah, you muted me right as I hit the bottom of the stairs. My bad. My camera will be on in 2-3 seconds here.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. All right, so Victory Awaits, Victory Denied, Victory Lost. And now I should say there are a bunch of other games. So there's like 3 or 4 from the Revolution games, including Poland Defiant, Narva, Königsberg, and a 4th one, I believe. And then now 3 Crown Games, which I don't own any of these, and I would be interested in trying one. 3 Crown Games, if you're listening. You can send them to, anyway, 3 Crown Games. So the designer of those, not the Japanese gentleman, but there's someone else, Stefan something, Ekstrom, I think.
Ekstrom, yeah.
He's designed 3 or 4 for them already on kind of, to me, pretty rare. Well, like Königsberg and Narva, to me, are kind of rare East Front kind of scenarios. He's done a few more kind of, to me, more rare East Front scenarios. I really like to look at their maps and their counters. I really should get one just to compare it. It might become my favorite FPS system, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So it's a chip.
I'm sad I gave you Poland Defiant back now.
Well, you can probably never get it back from me. So
yeah, it was hard the first time.
Well, wait a minute, where were we going with that? You were talking to Victory Awaits, and you were talking about all those Revolution games. What I missed?
So they're all in the same system.
Yep, they all use the same system.
Oh.
But they're almost all East Front, or they're all East Front games. That's the sad part.
I played all those other ones too. I didn't even realize that. Good point.
Well, I mean, they're kind of basically pulled from that. Chit pull, pretty easy. I think the Revolution, it looks like 3 Crown Games. They had some little tweaks and stuff to them. I think one of the 3 Crown Games adds a more of a restricted divisional leadership thing. Like you can only command your division and some independence units. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that because the way these victory games are designed, it is free for all. So, so if you're really hardcore historical, it's going to be kind of buggy. But let me get back to why that is. So they're chit pull mechanisms. You have basically, gosh, what are they? Are they divisions or maybe, yeah. And
yes, I believe
they're
so.
Divisions, and you have division headquarters. But if I
pull Army headquarters,
headquarters,
Army group headquarters almost, yeah.
So but it doesn't matter who I pull. If there's a unit within a command radius of that 4 hexes of that commander, you can command the troops. So, they can do a lot of stuff. They can combat together. They can you can like totally separate them from their command. So they can get probably a little wacky if you're really hardcore about that. But if you're hardcore about it, there's a lot more detailed games. So you pull a chit, and it just goes that. We had as many, I think, as 32 to 34 chits was the most we had in the turns.
No, there's more than that because there were 17. I don't know. I think when I looked at it, we got up to like 37 or 38 once you put
Okay.
all of them in there.
Yeah. So chip pull and so that's fun. Makes for good. It makes it very soloable if you wanted to do that way. So McMurray and I were doing like we've done a lot of games, basically playing solo together. We played both sides. McMurray kind of focused on the Manstein, 3rd Panzer, Grenadier, all these kind of the Guderian guys. He kind of on that center. I handled a lot of the other stuff. But
You handled Army Group South pretty well.
Yeah, he focused on all those because those are activated a bunch. So you have all your normal chits and counters. You have a reserve counter. You have a supply counter, in which case you check supply all the time. And the interesting, fun thing is you have a Guderian and Manstein counter. Those are held out, so the German player holds that out, and if something, and they can play it at any time. Like they can play the very first chit of the turn, or they can kind of let it go and see what happens. Because I think this 3rd Panzer have 2 chits themselves.
Both of those divisions have 2 activation chits already, and then they have that Guderian and Manstein chit. Those 2 chits, which allow them to essentially. So you don't just use them. Right, you can you bop whatever chit you just pulled back into the cup.
Oh yeah. So if you're there, you're the German player, and you pull a Russian chit out, you can be like, oh, put him back. I want to play Manstein. So then Manstein. But the thing is, and if you put your commanders close enough to those guys can even operate more than that. Other commanders. Okay, so that's kind of how the game works. Combat, it's all very simple, just odds. It doesn't do like ST doesn't have it just rounds down normal mini games. I'll just sum it up. To me, this game is easier than SCS. I mean,
I would agree with you. I think at its core, it's not necessarily more difficult, but there's less. It seemed like there were less extra rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you bought this game and you wanted the large game is quite intimidating if you're by yourself. Just played the 3 separate ones. So, my next time I play that game, I will play Army Group South, and again, we'll talk about that why that is later. Anything else I need to sum up? Then we can start going. We just wanted to go through basically, different points we thought of playing, like mistakes we made, things we do differently next time. I don't know. Maybe it'll help you when you play it. It'll help us remember, so we can come back and like, okay, what did we say? So, there's that. We are very quiet in the comments and very quiet in the people watching, but that's cool. All right, so it's going to be just us three talking to each other. Wait.
Oh, geez, really? Where is everybody?
They're probably watching the football game.
Oh, yeah, football started, and then I think was already on or somebody was on. So
he was on earlier. I don't know if he still is.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so I'm just going to go down a list. McMurray's got some of my thoughts too, and some of them will be the same. So. And these are not in any sort of particular order. Oh yeah, I did. You can look at our faces, or we can show.
I was about to say, why don't you go through yours, and then if I have comments that align with them, I'll just jump in when you bring stuff up.
Yeah, I think what I want to do real quick here is I'm just gonna let's go through our pictures real quick. And I think what I've got here, I figured out was we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I think we got. Those pictures, we didn't get turned one picture. The first one's got the glare. We figured out we could turn those lights off and get a decent enough picture of them.
Yeah.
So here's turn 2. If you remember anything specific you want to talk about, just let me know. But you can kind of see the progress of our battles here. So I don't know if you can see it here, but their setup hexes are very easy. Like this is, I don't know. I'm going to make something.
It's even labeled, which is a nice thing. Like you have a start line.
Yep.
But then the army groups that are on the table are labeled, and you just have to put their counters on in those zones.
But the big thing here is there's a red jagged line here. It kind of goes all the way across here. The Soviets cannot cross westward into that. So it as I will explain over here on the Army Group South later. Up here it didn't really matter, but that just know that is the case, and because they weren't going to go attack in that direction. I think that's the biggest thing about that. So we'll just kind of click through.
It is weird that that's a rule, but they still have the flippable control, chits for control of, what is it, Königsberg and Lvov maybe, which are behind the German start line.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is just kind of a weird one. It was annoying playing it because both of those were essentially on that bottom hex row, and we were trying to play it. And once you get started playing, 2-3 feet onto that table, I wound up picking them up and put them up in the Gulf of Riga or something because we kept winding them up with them on our forearms and stuff.
Yeah. So, basically, to win the game, you need 101 victory points.
191.
You get them by taking city hexes. So Kiev's worth 3. Hey, Charles, what's up, man? Thanks for coming on. You're a very. I wish I had an award for you because you'd get it because you're always on watching.
Charles is awesome.
Bless you.
So,
what's the thing? So you take for each. So Kiev's worth 30 points, and you get those points, and you just count them up. You get points for destroying Soviet armor, and then you lose for losing German armor. We did not lose any German armor. We lost. Let me think. That's one of my notes. We lost 2 German units and some steps. If that says anything about the combat charts.
In the whole thing?
yes.
Yep. Maybe 4 because it's kind of hard to tell
Because you bring in reinforcements out of essentially your dead pool other than mechanized and armored units.
Yep.
Those are always dead. When they die, they're always dead. But any infantry or cavalry or mounted troops or mountain troops like that all come back in as your reinforcements.
Okay.
So with the Soviets, there's a giant pile. With the Germans, it was a little harder.
So this is 3 maps put together, 3 standard size maps. There is a lot of overlap in them, though, so it's not full. What would that be?
It's not fully 6 feet across. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They're usually 22 inches wide. So anyway,
By 33.
So I'll just keep going here. Bloop. I gotta look at some real quick.
That's what turn is that?
So this was supposed to be turn 3.
That might be turn 3 because that would have been the second day we played.
Yep. Yeah. You can see we've captured Riga, which we were pretty excited about.
Yeah.
And we had some other towns that we'd caught. Pretty slow going here. I would handle this different. So this is one reason I want to play Army Group South. This whole deal and then this whole deal, which I'll talk about. Look. Well, what's going on here at Riga, Andrew?
Well, those of you who watched us play It Never Snows know that we're not always the best at blocking all of the enemy's routes to send single units or a couple units all the way plummeting down into our backfield to mess with ourselves on the more gamey portions of the game. So we checked. We found a railroad that was uninterrupted from the Soviet side.
Reinforcements.
Which is only from that top edge of the board, as you can see.
Yep.
We traced an uninterrupted rail line all the way from that board edge into Riga. It was free of German units or ZOCs.
Yep, pretty smart.
Kind of like, 30 Corps Highway in
Eindhoven?
Yeah, it was embarrassing. So that was actually a giant thorn in our side, basically for the rest of the game.
Yeah, because
it's kind of amazing how thin your Soviet line there is in the Army Group North and Center.
Yeah,
well, everybody got killed. The issue is then they got into Riga, so we essentially had 2 German armies just dealing with that nonsense.
Okay, so that took away from your progression in probably north and center because you had to divert troops.
Yep,
correct. Mainly north, because I think it's 6th Army and 16th Army maybe, or 18th Army, one of those two. There were 2 dark blue.
These right down here
were really slowed, which then also meant I think it's 4th Panzergruppe had to go a little slower on that very north end of that salient to hold their push so the Soviets didn't get behind them, which is another thing that we goofed up that we'll talk about at the end of the turn 4 video.
Yep. Turn 4.
There we go.
So look, but real quick, you see they've got Riga. They're like all come now. It's like, doggone it. Because now, so basically, we can spoiler alert. we don't get further than here.
Yeah, which should have been really easy because Talon up there, which is where Todd's cursor just was, should have been an easy grab. And then Leningrad is the only Leningrad and Kiev are worth or have 3 city hexes. Those 2 cities are worth more than Smolensk and Minsk and Odessa all put into, you know what I mean? Because they each have 3 hexes. We didn't get anywhere close to Leningrad. We didn't get anywhere close to Talon. To be honest with you, I don't even know if we would have taken Talon if we had fully played out that last turn. We might have, but it would have taken some creative monkey shines with the OKH counter and stuff like that.
Yeah. So woods, slow you down. Then there's heavy woods that really slow you down. And then there's marsh. So these are the things that really, I mean, you can tell, this is like an ocean.
Pripyat marshes right there. Yeah.
So this this would have been challenging up here near Leningrad because you're channeled through your attacks.
Correct.
The values go down and all that stuff. So let's see. Joseph says about this game after waking up one morning on vacation, finding a live stream of Wardrobe playing it. Oh, great. So
nice.
Glad. I need to write MMP to make sure I get my 2 cents commission check on that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Joseph, you had a chance to play one of the scenarios yet? All right. So that's turn 4. Let's go look at turn 5. Oh, look at Riga's still taken.
Yeah, Riga is still in possession of the Soviets.
You'll also notice that over here in Army Group South, how it looks like this. Again, great. Todd's doing great down here. So here's, wait, hold on. Let me look at,
I was about to say.
Let me look at turn 4 real quick. Okay, so turn 5. So we got all saucy and got all frisky. So we got, look at this advantage up here. Like,
there are Germans on the east bank of whatever river runs through.
Look at this bed. And then what's this one up here? That's that long town name.
Petropavlovsky.
Petrovsk.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were like, I remember when McMurray asked me, do you think I should rush over? We're like, yeah, let's do it. And so he did. Yeah.
It was just kind of that'd be entertaining. Turns out it was kind of a waste, but that's okay.
Let's go to turn 4 though and talk about that. That's one of our points. Let me see, crossed off my list.
Because you can see that great big empty spot over there. The only counter up there is the control counter.
Yeah, look at this. This was turn 4. At the end of turn 4, it's just nothing there. So so that was one of my things you want to talk about. Supply. Talk about that, McMurray, at turn 4. How you don't have to do it, right?
Sorry, I had to grab my phone charger.
Okay.
Were you talking about supply, or you want me to talk about supply?
You talk about it. You were the one that kind of noticed it. And
the Soviets, they do supply almost exactly like the core supply rules. Core supply rules in SCS work, right? Yeah. You just have to trace a line of zone of control free hexes back to your supply side. Period. That's it. That's how those guys down there in the Pripyat marshes weren't out of supply basically from, turn 3 or 4 was because there's always some hole they can trace through, right?
Yeah, you would have to, like every other space, actually not. Every 2 spaces have a German unit, and that's not really very effective. So we were able to get creative with all that stuff the entire time. But the Germans had to stay within, 5 or 6? 6 hexes, I think.
6. We figured out it was 6. 6 hexes of a German-controlled rail hex, right? That was free of zone of control all the way back. So the entire rail line all the way back to, Germany / Western Poland had to be free of enemy ZOCs. Which the other thing to keep in mind is that supply is checked on a random chit, right? Supply is a chit that's in there. So if the supply chit has already been pulled for the turn, then you know that you've got a while before you got to worry about supply. As well as if you have the Manstein and Guderian counters, you know that you're going to have a couple mulligans to buy yourself a little bit more time.
Yep.
Which we did a couple times, which
I like that reference.
Yeah. The mulligan.
Yes.
McMurray's a big golfer. So look at Joseph's comment here. He said, I soloed Leningrad once, and I think North would be a fun one to try as well because it's also it's very hard. I think it's more challenging that center.
Yeah, I tried it once. I couldn't take Leningrad.
Because I didn't get very deep with the Germans. I think the idea is to take advantage of Germans not needing to check supply for the first 4 turns. Well, Joseph, we forgot that. And
that's what we're getting into now.
yeah. So at some point, McMurray was like, he like was, we kept looking at the rules and doing stuff. But at some point he goes, oh my gosh, we didn't have to check it till turn 5, basically.
It was when I got to turn 4 on the chart. I was looking at it, I was like, the Germans start checking supply now, this turn.
Is it turn 4 they check it or turn 5?
It's turn 4. You start on turn 4. That being said,
and we were checking it and thinking about it all 3 turns.
Every single turn.
I mean, we didn't really have any problems with it, but was affecting our movement. We're like, oh, I don't get out of supply.
It did, and when we finish all this, I've got some thoughts on that and how that actually may have affected our play. Because my first initial thought, well, let's finish this walkthrough, kind of.
Joseph, I think this is this series, all the victory games. I see now here, the Revolution ones are a little bit more complex, but yes, I think this one particularly, especially center, would be fun to teach a new person like you, Joseph. You probably got this figured out. Hey, RMA, you would play you play the Soviets and then let the newbies play the Germans and have them.
Or honestly, I think as an introduction, playing it like we played it might be a lot more fun because
that's true. That's true.
This is a really good way to get people started playing war games. And I'm going to keep this short, I promise, because there's not necessarily a winner or a loser. So you eliminate the possibility of somebody going, oh, well, that guy kicked the shit out of me. I don't want to play that game anymore. I've not necessarily seen too many people have that issue with hex and counter board games, but I have seen people have that issue with miniature games like Chain of Command, where it's just playing kind of cooperatively where you play both sides might be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, the Russians really get spanked here. Like, see that big pile of red over there?
Yeah, those are dead guys.
Those are dead. Well, except for those top white ones there. But these all here are, I mean, you're just cranking.
No, this is turn 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is turn 4. They might not all be dead guys. By turn 5 or 6, all the white ones that you see over there are also dead guys.
So anyway, so that's turn 4, and then turn 5, you can see this guy up there. So I don't know. Anyway, so we'll get through this. So there's turn 5. Just so everyone knows, we're talking about A Victory Awaits, the International Game Series, MMP, Multi-Man Publishing. This is turn 6.
The full campaign game. You can see that we have taken both hexes or all 3 hexes of Kiev at this point in time.
And that is up here.
That's it.
Got a little pocket of guys here. So we took Riga finally. So supply is pretty brutal in this game. So supply, if you're out of supply,
you just lose a step.
You lose a step.
There's
these guys, the next turn, they're going to go out.
Yeah, there's no lasting supply effects. You just start dying. Like, it's unpleasant.
Yeah. So I think that's probably another way to get some stuff done. You just got to really get a tight grip on, keeping somebody out of supply, but yet while still moving forward. That would be an interesting thing to try. So, and then you can see over here where this little cup is. I don't know if you can see the cup, but I put as Soviets, we put some guys in there in defense just so they couldn't take it. I mean, you'll see they don't get very far with that. So how long are the turns? They're 10 days.
Yeah.
Meandering Mike, thanks for jumping on. Oh, I bet his phone died.
Oh, we lost Andrew.
Yeah. So let's look at what's going on here. So is that what you meant, man? During Mike, what do they represent? It's 10 days. Yeah, it kind of was. I just think this is I think it's just nice because another thing you can do, it depends on the person that's playing. It depends on the person playing.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. If you're really new, I think it's nice to be able to work with somebody without the pressure of like, I'm going to lose something. And you can also like I said, we played this whole game and the Germans lost. I'm going to say 4. I don't think it was even 4 units, but I'm just trying to be conservative in my guess. So you take a lot of risks in this game and you're going to be fine. let's see. I don't remember an Army Group center how I did. I'm sure. I bet I didn't do that great. Wouldn't have done as well as McMurray did on it because I'm not as aggressive as he is. But now I want to try it because I've seen it done.
Well, let me throw some rules questions here, and I know I asked you all this while you are playing it. So 2 things that I was wondering about, and I know we talked about them earlier. So no aircraft and no forms of artillery.
Correct.
And how would you say how did they abstract that?
I think I would assume they just added it into, strength points. I mean, you have divisions, man. It's going to take a shitload of aircraft or an ungodly amount of artillery. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, and they didn't have like anything for die roll modifiers, or you could spend air points to drop in on an attack, or
no. No, it would. I can see where it would have been maybe a thing where you could, add a shift for air on a couple of hexes, like you get in a couple games. But honestly, I don't think the game lost anything by not having it in there.
All right. So where were your die roll modifiers? Terrain only, or unit type, or
terrain?
Just literally terrain. I mean, they. No, go ahead. I'm going to say because I have a good question here. I'll wait till the end now.
Okay.
If I can remember it.
Well, that's good now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just played, and I'll say this. This is just my opinion of only playing one map, but looking at the whole game. You just played, and I'm going to reference Day of Days because how I always talk about Day of Days being an easy play monster. Well, this is an easy play monster.
This is an easier play monster, yeah.
Right. And it just sounds to me like they didn't. I mean, okay. So what was your penalty for being out of supply?
You lose a step.
Right. And your supply pass, other than what you were talking about, the Germans had to stay within a particular range. For the Russians, it was just trace down a road or a rail back off the map.
No. You don't even have to do that. You just have to trace. Like I said, it's like pure SCS supply.
Okay.
In the core rules, as long as you can trace a line of non-ZOC hexes back to your supply points, you're fine.
Okay, so they really minimized that.
Yep.
They accounted for air and artillery without having to put a rule in the game to make you think of something else.
Yep.
And okay, I know I've already seen the final map, and it's maybe with a few things that you all didn't maneuver to, but because your strategy wasn't calling for it the way y'all were addressing it. This is Barbarossa.
Yes.
I mean, you guys.
I would say we might have been marginally less successful than Barbarossa itself.
And I would say by looking at the map, which turn is this?
I think this is 6.
All right. So looking at this map here, if I had to say, if I had not watched you guys play or talked to you all at all, and I was going to take a guess at what your strategic plan was, what your primary goal was, it looks to me like Smolensk to Moscow.
Yep. I mean, that's where all your points are. I mean, they kind of drive you that way because that's where most of your points are.
Right.
Except for Leningrad.
Well, okay. So you made a decision that the OKH or OKW, they were, I mean, other than after the initial kickstart of Barbarossa, they had 3 or 4 objectives. You guys made a choice on the fly of where to gain the best chance for victory. So,
yeah.
To be honest with you, I feel like we could have really, if we hadn't lost Riga on turn 3 or whatever, I feel like we could have had a lot more punching power punching east because we wouldn't have had that whole stretch back. We could have, if we needed to, essentially got to where you have all those forests and all those marshes and then just held that line as opposed to having that whole long line going back.
So at any point during the play of this game, was there enough movement allowance in time that you could have shifted your strategy completely, like say from center to south? Could you have diverted the panzer groups from center to south if you had wanted to, or center to north?
So we kind of did do that a little bit with what was the red Panzer Group, Todd, that was in Army Group Center? Because that so
Was that
basically,
third?
I think it's whichever one was Manstein's
It's second,
or Guderian's. Fourth Panzer Group, I think.
second and third, I think, were in the middle, and first and fourth were on the ends.
Either way, the point is what actually wound up taking Kiev was a Panzergruppe going north of the Pripyat marshes, taking Gomel, and then just cutting straight south. That wasn't a push directly from the west. That was a drive south to
This way.
Kiev, and then we coordinated and met up with the forces that were kind of stalled pressing east in Army Group South.
Well,
So
you guys initially took Riga quickly, right?
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Turn 2.
Yeah.
And you took the crossings there at Daugavopoulos, whatever, or just across the river to the east southeast of Riga. Right in there. You took those pretty quick.
Correct.
Which that was Manstein. So
Yep.
y'all pushed quite a way in 6 turns. I mean,
We did. Which are we done with our? Let's do our final wrap up on our gameplay, Toddy, and then we can.
So
God, I
7.
took a terrible picture. Jesus.
I think that was actually me. There's a banana.
Okay.
There's a banana for scale.
Accurate. That is a large banana.
All right, all right. So anyway, so here we are. We're kind of pushing now. I'm starting to push this way to try to take, because it was going to get me a lot faster going around this way than trying to go through this one road on the woods here. So I tried, and then we started putting some Soviets. Like, oh yeah, you just think you're going to come over here? I don't think so.
Pushing north towards Talon. It's hard to see where your cursor's at.
Oh yeah. Sorry everybody. Sorry the map's so small. Talon, yeah. This is north too. Yeah, the orientation is east up top. And let me
So
see.
if you're looking at the screen,
No, that's
if you're looking at the screen, north is left, south is right, up is east, up is east, down is west.
Oh, I can zoom in easy. Sorry, I don't use this part of the program very much. This is actually turn 8.
Yes, that's end of. Because by then we had captured Bryansk as well, almost all the way onto the Soviet map edge,
Oh,
right
good
there in
Lord.
Army Group Center. Uh-oh.
Don't look at some of the pictures. No, I'm just kidding. So that was turn 8. So real quick, let me talk about this real quick. So Army Group South. So at some point I realized, oh, that's a video. Shoot, you don't want to see that.
I mean, we can still use
Turn
it as a.
8, I realized the Soviet, remember what we said in the beginning? Soviets cannot cross this red line. So
Yeah.
for most of the game, I was World War I in it. The Germans, so these are Romanians here. They have like 1 combat factor. And you're trying to get as many points to go across the river and attack. It's insane. Anywho, I was just going back and forth, like the Soviets counterattack, even had with the Germans back and forth. And then I realized, like, wait, why don't I just all concentrate it? So this is how I'd play Army Group South different, is one thing. I would just find some weaker spot, easier place to attack, and just move everything over there and just attack, because these guys will never come around. Now, see, so that's kind of unrealistic. But what's supposed to happen is these guys should be up here threatening there, so they're not all going to attack here. They're going to defend themselves here. I'm sorry, I'm talking about down here. I'll go slower near the pencil and the tweezers. These guys should have gotten further that way. I'm not sure what I did wrong here. I don't know what.
So that's a German infantry army.
Oh yeah.
And so there's not a whole lot of punching attack factor. There are Army Group South. The only place you have non-army units, so units that don't have their own dedicated HQ, is you have a few Army Group South, just armored divisions, and maybe a mechanized division or 2.
Thanks, Mike.
What's up?
Mike said I got to keep my porn albums nested a couple folders deep, so when I do that, I don't show it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Say hey, Charles. We'll see you later. Thanks for coming on, man. It's always great seeing you. Joe Saban, thanks. Joey's good seeing you on here. Whoever else is on here, thanks for popping on. Brian. Oh, great. Well, I guess we need to do this real quick. Sorry, everybody. Of course, Jeff's getting all the views here. You're welcome, Brian, I guess.
It says Wardrobe and McMurray in my title. Nothing about me.
I know, I'm just kidding. Anyway, no German help was sent to the Romanians. Well, the Germans were there. I mean, I was trying to get the Germans to help them, but I don't know.
Well,
yeah, I'm not sure what I do. So that's why I want to play this. I'm like, I got to figure something out different here.
Yeah,
so anyway,
South was a tougher nut to crack.
I was like, I got to figure out how to punch this out, and I wouldn't World War I it.
Okay, well, you've only got 11th Army down there for the Germans, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to get up here and stop sharing that. We're going to have to look at all of our mugs here. All right, so I'm going to stop screen sharing, getting out of that. All right, so Army Group South would be something different too. That was one of my points I wanted to say. I'd push through Przasnysk or something like that to get through there and concentrate my forces. I would have pushed through there in a couple turns, and then they would have just flooded out there, and the Romanians could have even gone around and fought on that side of the river. You know, who knows how it would change it, right? But yeah, there's not a lot of armor. Army Group South, we pushed them up here because nothing was happening down here, so we
can't see the map anymore.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so Army Group South was down there, and then we just nothing was happening, so
we pushed their Army Group armor east.
Yeah, so.
Well, okay, so yeah, but that's what they did anyhow. They were the prime arrow for Kyiv.
Correct. So I'm not saying that all the army or all the armor in Army Group South, because there's an Army Group, there's a Panzer Group down there, but Army Group South, there are like 4 armored counters that are just Army Group South counters. Those are the ones that you're getting at. They just kind of like were sitting around because there's not, it's tougher to get them going without a dedicated command. They'll end up having to leapfrog.
Yeah, and 11th Army's there's not enough. While they had some good divisions, 11th Army was not enough ass to.
There's not. They have the Soviet attack problem where almost all their units are just 2 or 3 strength points, which is not enough in this game to get what you need. One interesting thing about this game that's a little unique is the CRT is pretty attacker friendly. Once you hit 3-1 odds, attackers can't lose any casualties, period. It's not even on the CRT.
Wow.
Which is how, at least personally, I don't know about Todd, but that's how I was able to maintain next to no German losses, because it really blunts that issue that you run into with a lot of games where you've got really strong, powerful, punchy, armored units, but then you roll poorly and all of a sudden you have an A1 result, and so you got to just lose a step off there. Here, if you can get 3-1 odds, it's not even a question, right?
Well, okay. So what was the result or the outcome of the whole play?
German victory at the end of turn 8. Todd, you want to pull up the map again real quick?
228 points.
And you needed what?
191.
Okay. So my question is if you had not been so strong in the center, which I guess you kind of got to be, what if you had focused more in the south? Could you have attained that victory condition by going south?
I don't think so. Basically, the only victory spots you've got down south are Kiev, which we wound up taking anyways. The only things really that we missed down south were Dnipro, Petropavlovsk, and Odessa.
Right.
Which that's not nearly enough.
That's 30 points, and Kyiv's worth 30. So
it's intriguing that they set the game up around. It sounds to me like your victory points were all based around city or urban centers.
Yep.
And how the southern, the Ukrainian area, you would have thought there might have been more value there because it was so needed for the food sources and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I would expect that if it was a longer duration war game, right? Like if it was the first year of the war. But I think that was a good way to abstract the German objectives and their thinking with this is going to be a 12-week campaign until finally, OKH and everybody else said, okay, fine, we'll have your workers back in 16 weeks. Don't worry. In 16 weeks, the Soviet Union will have completely capitulated. So the German objectives, especially during Barbarossa, they didn't give a shit about capturing a breadbasket or something. That was beyond. They were going to have this war in the East over with before the Soviets were worried about, before that harvest even came in.
Right. Well, plus all the higher command, they were the ones that wanted Moscow as the prime objective anyhow.
Well, exactly. And that's my point is that I agree with you that especially like if this was something like Avalon Hill's Blitzkrieg, that sort of duration.
Right.
Or not Blitzkrieg, Stalingrad. That's the one that's basically the entire Eastern Front for the first 2 years. I agree with you, but with again, all this whole game ends on September 10th.
Right. So
which
that
is
brings up two questions then. Okay, one, and since Todd, you got the rule book sitting there.
I don't actually. They're all
They're-
at his house.
Okay, so it may
Both
be
copies of the
interesting to
crash.
look up what the victory conditions are just to play the Army Group South. And then
That's
two,
good.
does it seem like the game funnels you through Army Group Center?
Oh, I
Yeah.
think undoubtedly it does, because that's where all the cities are. That's where all the Soviet Union's population centers are. That's where most of their industrial centers are.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah, which historically makes sense. The Germans didn't go into this thinking, oh, we need to take the Ukrainian farmland and the oil fields of the Caucasus. Undoubtedly, those might have been, especially the oil fields of the Caucasus, were certainly something they were thinking about, but that wasn't the initial push, right? The push was, we're going to take Moscow. The Soviet Union is going to magically capitulate. Stalin's going to say, whoopee, we're friends again. And then, we'll have all this Lebensraum and all these resources. Unfortunately, that obviously didn't happen. But so the other thing about the victory conditions, because we're talking about those, and it's an important note for what we're kind of talking about right now, and with the points, right? It's not, you don't have to just achieve 191 points, right? You have to have 191 points at the end of turn 9.
In supply, right?
Correct. No, not necessarily in supply, but cities are worth less if they're out of supply. They're only worth 5 if they're out of supply, as opposed to 10.
Were
if
there
they're-
levels of victory, or just you either win or you didn't?
Win or lose, baby. Win or lose.
I am curious, though, to know what the victory conditions are going to be for Army Group South in that game.
It's 52 points, and
Yeah, I was
you're
about
going
to
to
say,
get.
I assume it's just smaller points totals.
Yeah, you're going to get that by taking Kyiv, Odessa. You're going to.
And then eliminating a bunch of mech stuff, maybe holding one thing that I don't know how we did that versus how it's supposed to be played. I think we wound up doing it pretty appropriately, but it's a little confusing. There's stand fast cities, which if you take one as the Germans and you hold on to it, you get 5 points if it's in supply, or 2 points if it's out of supply. But then as the Soviets, you can start pulling one of those off per map section. So one off of the north map, one off the center, and one off the south map per turn, starting on turn 6.
Todd, did you have a picture of the setup before you started playing?
No.
Okay, so if go back, let's go all the way back to the start with your deployments. Okay, obviously you were successful as the Germans, but if you were going to take a different approach, what changes in the setup at the start would you have considered?
There's not a whole lot of independent setup.
What's up, Toll?
So they set in zones. I mean, you didn't have to put this Panzer division had to go in this hex. They just went in zones. So could you have modified that and took a different approach? I mean, hell, can you even shift a Panzer army to another?
No.
Okay.
They have to stay within their army group zones.
And stacking is 2 units in a hex.
Correct, which means that you also can't concentrate and make it light somewhere else, because most of them there's 2 units, 2 units, 2 units, 2 units, 2 units. There's not much.
Okay, so all right, so where do you think you, other than Riga, where did you miss as the Germans, and where did you miss as the Soviets?
So this isn't. Go for it, Todd.
Well, I think. Yeah, in the South, I'm not sure yet. I need to play South to determine. Wow, we could have done that differently. Besides the far south with the Romanians, that I figured out. What I struggled with is I got all trapped up because it's mountains and woods, and it's really hard to get around. Because what McMurray was able to do is you could get around, and because if they have to, just like SES, if they have to retreat through a zone of control, you lose a step. So you might just do Defender 1. Retreat 2. Well, if they have to, once they have to go, there's only 2 steps in the unit.
What I found out doing it towards the end was really effective. Is there's a lot of retreat results, which then if you can force, even if it's a full, 2 counters that are full value, if they have to retreat through 2 zones of control, they die.
Yeah, there are a lot of results that are just retreat. Lots of R's and RRs, and then not to get higher is at 1 RR.
Right.
So I'd have to look. I think probably go around those woods on the Army Group South, and maybe take advantage of what little armor you do have, use that Army Group South units to go around and start cutting those guys off, because once they get cut off in supply, man, they're screwed.
In zone control block supply.
Yeah.
We could have certainly also used the Soviets can't cross the red line
Better,
especially
at
the south end of Poland there.
Yeah.
That we both kept units between the Soviets and German start line when we 100% didn't have to.
Well, I mean, it's Barbarossa. All right, plain and simple. Keyword, it's Barbarossa. But is there a potential strategy in this game, other than maybe getting lucky to knock German units out of victory point hexes? Is there a strategy from day one that can be effective as the Soviets?
Go ahead.
Get after it, Todd.
Well, I'm looking something up, so go ahead. Because we had talked about how we'd play the Soviets differently.
Yeah. So we did not trade space for time very well, which is something I run into a lot. Your gut is to, with that table, try and build up your defensive capability as much as you can. But that's a losing venture, because no matter what, you're just going to have a couple of German 8-4 units roll up, and the max the Soviets for the most part can get in terms of strength points into a hex is 4, right? So if they're attacking in the clear with 16 points, it's a 4-1, right? If you're in woods, even it's 3-1. Germans still can't lose a unit. It might be harder, but they're going to push you back.
And you can't leave gaps because they just encircle you in.
Correct. I think the play for the Soviets is just making lines of one counter defensive lines, right? Just to force the Germans. I mean, the Germans can only attack so many times.
You hope now that they make a fourth game called A Victory Continues or A Victory Delayed or something like that, where
a victory for Stalin.
Yeah, where you can go past Barbarossa.
Well, that's what Smolensk is and Victory Denied is. Those are still like mid.
I was about to say, isn't Victory Delayed or whatever, and then
Denied.
Victory? What's the other one? Victory Lost.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those in just a second here, real quick. I think another thing. So Joey's right. That does take practice, 100%. Well, that's what's cool about this game. If you sat down and really did it, you could really play it. You could definitely play the single mappers pretty fast.
Absolutely. Even with the full campaign game, it was only taking us an hour, maybe an hour and a half if we buckled down. We could do it an hour for a turn.
Yeah. So in this way, it might be nice to have 2 or 3 players, kind of going. You'd really get it out fast.
I was about to say we would have had if we'd had 3, maybe 4 people playing, aside from occasionally having to worry about chit overlap. These turns would have been 45 minutes long, an hour tops for the real heavy combat turns.
I'm sorry Jeff left, because one thing I wanted to talk about is that we do differently with the Soviets, I think, is using the headquarters differently.
Correct. I was thinking about that.
So it's a bummer Jeff's not here. So everybody, what happens is, thanks for coming on, everybody, by the way, and just comment that you're here and all that. We like hearing from you. So the commanders, you are allowed, the Soviets for every turn, I don't know, whatever, every turn, most turns are allowed 3 to 5 command units they can bring in, because there's a bunch of command units that they have just sitting in reserve. And remember, anybody can command anybody. So we got really thin because we would wipe out the command units, and then you had a bunch of Soviets that couldn't do anything. We should have been more aggressive about bringing those guys in instead of units, because they could have been out there, and then you could have activated some Soviet units 4 or 5, well, not 4 or 5, maybe 3 times at a turn, as opposed to 0 to 1.
Yeah, that also probably could have been a way to more effectively funnel units forwards.
Yes, because then we start getting these big chunks of reserves, and you could only bring them in, and then you couldn't move them because you had no command. So that was a failing on our part, is not bringing. Just basically got to bring them all in, bring all those commanders in, because we had 5 that didn't see action at all, at least.
Yeah, but
now you're right, Mike. Boars, zones of control. I mean, they're just normal zones of control, like the 6Xs around you. Movement cost. Oh, actually, there's tough. So it's 2 extra points to move into a zone of control, and then it's 2 extra points to move out of a zone of control. So you have a bunch of units that have 5 and 4 movement.
Basically,
at one point I trapped a unit. Well, actually, you can see them over here. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm just gonna do.
Yeah. I'm going to say basically every Soviet infantry unit, which is basically all the Soviets have on the board after a while, is 2-4, 2 strength points, 4 movement. Which means even if it's in the clear, the Soviets can move out of a zone of control and then 1 hex. Can't move out of a zone of control into another zone of control. Can't move out of control on a zone of control into heavy woods or marsh. It's rough. It is rough.
So see this Romanian unit here? Oh, you can. How funny. It's like huge on my screen and tiny on there.
That's okay. So we got 1 Romanian unit all the way in the south. Yep.
They cannot even move out of that hex.
Yep.
Because they have 4 movement, and it's going to cost them, well,
to cross the rivers, yeah.
Yeah, to cross the river would cost 2 to move there if nothing was there. So yes, I guess they could have moved there. How come some reason I thought they were stuck there?
Who knows?
Anyway,
because they're moving out of and into a zone of control.
Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. They couldn't. They were essentially trapped there.
Yes.
So that's so it is tough. And so Jeff, one of the things we talked about is using the commanders more effectively,
right?
Because you got a bunch of extra commanders and all that. So down here,
Kev's here. Hey, Kev.
Hey, what's up, man?
You get a little box, Kev?
No 1 hex minimum? No. Oh, that's a good point. That's a great point. I don't think so. I think, are you saying that you can move 1 hex no matter what? I don't think that was in this game.
I don't know if it is. We missed it. But
yeah, if we did, we missed it. But yeah.
Are these armor formations back here near?
No, these are mostly infantry.
There is 1 armored unit and 1 mobile. Yes, so there's a mobile unit there.
Interesting.
The red Germans are almost all infantry.
So
see, real quick, Jeff, real quick. This army group south here, I think that's the one that was down there, right? And they had some mechanized units.
They're orange.
Yeah.
And they just say AGS on them.
Yeah. I don't think. Anyway. I think that's one of these guys here. Okay, Jeff, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so all right, we answered the question for the Soviets. Don't really know what the potential is.
Well, the commanders are a big thing.
Right. Okay, so 222 points. If you replayed, should the points be more? Should you have attained more points than that, do you think?
Yes.
I feel like if we hadn't goofed up Riga, that would have at least been, maybe we could have got another 10 points out of Tallinn or something like that.
Right.
But we may have gotten farther towards Odessa.
And if we hadn't been checking, if we hadn't been worried about supply.
So here's actually something I wanted to talk about. That's my big brain melt with this game. We didn't check German supply, but how much would throwing those units out there have enabled the Soviets to encircle and get behind us to then start knocking out some of those German units? That was because I'm right there with you at face value, and through most of the gameplay, it was, man, I want it. How do we screw that up? But then how far would those guys have punched without maintaining that rail line, only to allow Soviet units to pour in behind them?
Well, right.
Because Soviet reserves, don't forget, come all the way down a rail line. They don't have reinforcements.
So that's going to be something that people are going to have a problem with, because I did it at one point. I went behind German lines with reserves, rail changes and all that stuff. But it's like, whatever. I mean, the whole game is.
It is. That's one of those things where zoomed way out. And I get it. Soviet trains and German trains were different gauges. That works both ways. If the Germans are converted, the Soviets can't move their crap onto it. If the Germans haven't converted it, the Germans can't move their crap onto it.
So basically, you have to do like we did here. You have to make sure you got one guy, and you have security units of like 1-3 units there for blocking rail lines and blocking lines of communication. And, you can, we chalked up things to like partisans. And so there's no partisan rules in here. There's all kinds of crap that could make it.
Well, Stalin and I guess his staff or his higher ups, they presumed or assumed that the southern sector would be the most the point of focus for any German attack.
Right, the most desirable, yeah.
Yeah, and so the buildup of forces was stronger in the south, and from what I understand it too, a lot of the armor was what armor they had was in the south for the majority. So I mean that makes it. I mean the fact that you all snatched Kyiv, you snatched multiple crossings across what's that the Dnieper or the Donets or whatever it is.
I think that's the Dnieper.
Yeah, I mean you just and it seems with the push you made. Scroll back over towards Smolensk, Todd. Throw your mouse over Smolensk real quick. Is it right there top of the map?
This is Smolensk.
Okay, so, I mean, you've blown way past just below Smolensk there. You've blown way up in there.
By end of game, we captured Bryansk.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean.
Oh, there you can see it. Yeah.
So I'm looking.
Moscow's not too far off that map.
So I'm looking here. I don't know how this is going to be here. So let me look at this. Let's see. I'm just looking before I put it on the camera. Oh yeah, I'm not going to show that. I'm looking at a map here from some big atlas of World War II, and it's not as much detail as you want. But like this is showing the front line in August. So it shows here that they were on the other side of Odessa, but Odessa was, it was surrounded. Like it was a fortress. They didn't take it until past October. But they didn't take. Kyiv wasn't taken at the end of August. Smolensk was taken. Gomel wasn't taken apparently before August was over. Cholm. But they were surrounding Leningrad.
Yeah, so we didn't get close to Leningrad.
We didn't do jack in the north.
Through the center.
So the south and north was just super weak, and I guess I can blame myself for south because I ran that most of the time on the German side.
Well, yeah, too. But the south, the very where the Romanians are in actual Barbarossa, the only reason that got blown open was because the group in Army Group South, they split towards Kiev and then towards Odessa, which put pressure on the back end of those troops down there. And you all didn't take that tactic. You went straight towards Kiev, and
yeah.
It's success. I think you were successful in what you did. Obviously,
yeah. Well, yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
We really. Oh gosh, what's the name of what's the German term?
Schwerpunkt.
Yeah, we seriously Schwerpunkt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason that we know the term, right? It works.
Yeah. Right.
It worked.
Let's see.
Now I'm saying if I'm sitting back at the high command, I'm thinking, okay, now I think we have the ability to push for Moscow before the year's out.
Yeah.
That map.
Yeah, for sure. So McMurray, besides the commanders, how would we use all those reserves differently for the Soviets? Because basically what I did with a lot of them, I was trying to block road paths to, keep them. I'd put them on the other sides of rivers, put them in forests, but blocking roads. But it would only be like 1 or 2 units, and I kind of spread them out. I don't know if that was the right move.
Correct.
We did blow through them, but you had to stop and combat them. So I don't know.
Yeah. That I think we misused, and this is my fault. I think I misused the Soviet armor for a counterpunch. Again, Soviet armor is still only 4-2. Like it's 4 on the attack, 2 on the defense. It still sucks. Like I set Soviet armor trying to counterattack German armor, which is 8-4. When I think the better idea with that would have been punching through some of those holding units that were those infantry armies with the 2 strength point stuff. And then trying to use that because I also have usually a mobility of 6, as well as the cavalry units that have, 5 movement points or something to try and encircle some stuff. But it's a hard game to play as the Soviets. It's a hard game to win as the Germans, but it's only a hard game to win as the Germans because you have to take so much. it's not hard to kill a bunch of Soviets and to take a bunch of territories to Germans. The thing that makes it challenging for the Germans is that you have to just be able to maintain that momentum. And I remember at the start of the game, we were worried because we hadn't taken that many points. We're like, oh, we need to take 27 points a turn or something.
Yeah.
We started out slow. About it when we might not have had to be. My biggest thing is, again, the supply thing. I thought a lot about that. And I think it almost was more of a saving grace for it, because then that Soviet counterpunch with that reserve armor may have been a whole lot easier to get through without our Soviets never had any initiative, period. I think we would maybe make a couple localized attacks.
Yeah, they were weak.
A turn, and that's it. There was never any Soviet counterpunch. I feel like with the mentality of we don't have to check supply, let's see how far we can push these German units, we really may have been able to, as a minorly aggressive Soviet player, at least cut the Germans off from supply in a manner that they might not have been able to recover from, right? Because once those tank units get way up there, if we can chuck 2 Soviet Defense 2 guys on a rail line, it's going to be hard for those German, 2 strength point units to kill them. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, and while they weren't very successful in, during Barbarossa, the Soviets did throw some counter punches.
Yeah, and that's my issue, is that we really weren't able to coordinate, or I wasn't really able to, not Todd's fault. I was not able to coordinate any sort of Soviet counter punches. Like I said, I occasionally we would get off a minor attack against an isolated unit or something like that, but it was rough. I think the most successful attacks we had were attacking across. I did attack across that red line against the Romanians a couple times, which was rather entertaining, because then Todd and I had a little bit of, wait, can we do that? Is that a thing? Can we do that?
Oh wow! So real quick, again, before I start talking about this, I think I've covered everything on my list. You got everything on your list?
I think so. We talked about the Soviets. We should have been bringing in more headquarters every turn. We weren't worried about it because the Soviets, when you bring in that many headquarters, you can't activate all of them. You can only throw a certain number of headquarters chits into the cup every turn. So we were kind of maintaining at that level when we probably had headquarters that we didn't need to be activating that were already on the table, that we could have thrown in just a ton of extra new headquarters and then gotten those Soviets a little bit more mobile. Whether that's for trying to orchestrate stronger, defensive positions or what, or even just getting them in there to activate. One thing that we ran into was we would have big gaps in the line where the Soviets just didn't have an HQ. So as the Germans, we didn't have to worry about, leaving 1 or 2 units defending kind of a big chunk, because we knew that the Soviets were dog water at moving when they could activate to move, because they didn't have any movement points. And B, they didn't have headquarters over there anyways. There is a counter for each side. It's Soviet reserves and OKH, which allows each side to move a certain number of uncommanded units, right? Units that are out of command of any headquarters. But it's only like 3 to 5 units for each side. You got to roll, odds are you're only rolling 3.
Well, it sounds like the game it's okay. So you don't necessarily play this game to say, can I win as the Soviets? Can I win as the Germans? It sounds to me like it's going to be a 99% win as the Germans. It sounds to me like the objective of like playing this game multiple times is to see, can I break the amount of points I got the first time?
Yes, I was about to say, as the Soviets, you're 100% just trying to not lose, right? You're not necessarily trying to win. You're trying to not lose, which I know sounds like a dumb philosophical difference there, but yeah.
But fun.
Very
fun because you all blew through it.
Yeah,
Very
and we're sitting here talking about it for an hour, which says something. I mean,
yeah.
Real quick, so Victory Denied is July to September of 41. Crisis at Smolensk. It's the same scale. It's 10 miles, except for a turn is 7 days, not 10 days.
Is it, how many maps is it?
It's 1.
Okay.
And then the Victory Lost is Crisis in Ukraine, 42 to 43. Okay. And I haven't looked at the rule book yet, but
that
similar.
sounds like your favorite SCS game, Rostov, kind of.
It's going to be similar.
It's a tough nut to crack. I was playing that with my buddy.
So the question is, do we even play a Victory, the Smolensk one now, if we already took Smolensk?
Is the unit scale different? Is it down into battalions and stuff? Or
no?
It sounds like it's the same. The time scale is slightly compressed, and that's it.
I would say the other one, the Ukraine, would be a better, because there's an operational nightmare in that game in Ukraine, and I know it because I watched it happen to me.
Real quick, a difference in this one, just kind of perusing through this real quick, is so a headquarters can activate a headquarters, so you can daisy chain it.
Oh man,
can you imagine that?
What? God, you could game the shit out of that though. There's got to be some sort of, because that's the one thing you can't use like OKH or reserves to activate an HQ.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like you can't do that, and God, you could really go nuts with that though.
Yeah. But like Kev said, one of these does have a little weird thing with the railroads or something like that. But
yeah, I saw that. But that being said, again, I had a fantastic time playing this. Big fan. Highly recommend, especially if you're looking for something that's fun to play, that you're not necessarily going to have to break your brain over.
Right.
Yeah, I'm amazed there's not as many people out there, at least not as many people that have listed it or posted about the play of this, because, like I said, I only played North, and it was fun. And like I said, you all have obviously had a blast playing. The game is, like I said, maybe the overall victory condition is not such a big thing to think about other than just those points, but just trying to figure out which direction to travel, in this thing and how hard to push, which obviously it's go full bore.
Yeah, it's a fun game to play. I feel like we could definitely play it again, and we might get a very different result. At the very least, the journey to get there would be very different. But
yeah, I mean I agree as far as how many people are playing. I guess just because people aren't making videos or writing it up doesn't mean they're not playing it. But I mean, we've talked about doing a war game boot camp at a Euro board game convention. Gosh, to me, just pull out like one of these.
Oh God, yeah.
Like play this in a day with 2 or 3 people playing.
Yeah, we talked. I think you were gone when we talked about that. But like at that convention where you're just trying to show people what games are like, this would be a fun one, because also the chip pool is fun, because that makes it different as well. Yeah, and with those 2 interrupting ones, it gives the German to feel like they got something to say about things. So
yeah, like we're talking about how quickly you can get through this. Most of our turns took an hour and a half or so, but we were also horsing around because
Secret Wrestling Camp.
I think it was the second session that we had. We got through one turn in like an hour and a half, hour 45, but then it was one of those, oh shit, Todd has to leave in about an hour, and then we slammed through that turn right off. It was the day that we unboxed something with Jeffy.
Oh, probably Thunder something you're getting
Thunder
ready to play.
in the Ozarks, which is what I'm currently playing, is on my table right now.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I would recommend it if you got people who aren't sure or they're wanting to learn. This is be a fun. It's got zones of control. It's got a combat odds thing. I mean, those two things there. It's got retreating, advancing after combat.
It's got everything that you expect to see in a board game because it does have supply. Whether you like how dense the supply rules are or not, it's something you can play where it's already going to be in a new player's head that, oh, yeah, supply's the thing. So you're not walking into the next game going, oh, shit, what's this? It's got all the elements you need in a war game that you would expect in a war game. They might not be as complex as you might like or you might expect, but they're there.
Yep. And real quick, Mike. Yeah, I mean, our goal with this boot camp wouldn't be even to finish games necessarily. It'd be more just to play even a turn of some game. Like here's, you can go from this to ASL. You'd have combat commander. You'd have just a memoir game set up. You just have a whole variety of games set up, modern, ancient, whatever. Probably commands and colors or something, and you'd have all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you're right. That's true. They would. I mean,
that's a weird thing because people do that with your games, but then they'll also play like Talisman or Arkham Horror or some shit that takes them 8, 9, 10 hours to complete.
Yeah, that's pretty rare though. I think he's generally right. Yeah,
he is. No, I agree with you.
So, anything else about this? Any other comments about the games, people?
1 to 10.
9. I might have given it an 8 on the thing, but yeah.
I think this game. That's a good question.
All right, play it again.
Oh, absolutely, without question.
And Todd recommended it, so
I think this game would get at least 6 Knights Crosses. Maybe smoke leaves, maybe some clusters, no swords or diamonds.
Okay.
Jeffrey. It certainly would get no winter uniforms because you don't need them, or at least we didn't.
Yeah, you got it done.
Our workers are back in time for,
Fall Festival. Beer Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're Oktoberfesting in St. Peter's Square right outside the Kremlin, or Red Square right outside the Kremlin.
So there you go. Thanks everybody for popping on. Appreciated all the comments and sharing the stories.
If you play it, let us know.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, shoot a quick vid of it. McMurray, thanks for playing it. That's cool. We're not sure what we're going to play next. But I mean, whatever.
I thought we were going to play We're going to start the big game we're playing next, right? Is it the next session just Stroll over Stalingrad trying to get it done in one day, which shouldn't be hard?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we don't know what we're going to play next. I don't know what I was going to say there. Anyway, okay. Everybody, thanks. Jeff, thanks for color commentary and questions and comments. Everybody like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Smash it. Just gently caress that bell. Just gently caress it so it rings. Okay. Night, everyone. See you, everybody. See you, Joey. Bye. Bye, Tool.